In this video, I'd like to try and show you how you can do some basic graphing on your TI Nspire calculator. There's really two ways that you can do it. The first way is to choose the graph menu on your scratch pad. This is kind of where you do a quick graph, and you can just plot. You can plot a whole bunch of different graphs, but this is generally the first place that you go. So if we select this, you'll see that we get a nice axis. And you see up here we've got our scratch pad for our calculator, then our scratch pad for our graph. The other option that we can do if we go back to the home page is we can go to the new document and we can add a graph to a new document. Now if we select that, then it looks very similar. We still have our graph down here. The difference is up at the top you can see that you're going to have documents open. And generally we save the documents for graphs or calculations or data that we're going to use again and again because it just stores it differently than it does the scratch pad. So I mean, if you're just trying to throw out a quick graph, it doesn't really matter which one you're going to do because we can always delete the documents as well, but that's the intended purpose behind this. Okay, so since I'm in here, I'm just going to graph on this page right here. And I'm going to do a graph of 5x, x down at the bottom, plus, let's say 5. We'll graph that. So here we get a nice graph on our screen. And there's a couple things that you can do with the graph once you have it on here. So first thing, if you notice down here, the equation seems to kind of be overwriting over some of the other stuff over the bottom axis. So I can come over here with my trackpad, and once I get the little hand on top of there, if I click and drag, which is sometimes kind of tricky to do with your trackpad, but if you can do that, then you can drag this over here and just move it out of the way. And it'll still stay on there, but it just kind of moves it out of the way of your general space. So now we've got our track or our graph on here. This is great. We can change the window settings. So there's 2 or 3 different ways that you can actually change the window settings. The first is you can select here so you can see how the text comes up. So if I double click on there, now I can change this. Let's say I don't like going into decimal, so I'm just going to go to 7. And then if I hit tab, I can go to the next axis. Well, I'm okay with it being on 10. Well, let's zoom in. Actually, let's do 5. Let's do that. And then go down here, we'll go to -7, and you can see that the window is automatically resizing as we go around. And then when I hit enter, there we go. So now it's zoomed in. Now, you know what? I look at this and I say, well, I don't like having all these little tick marks all along here. The calculator is going to automatically try and give you the marks that it thinks that you want to see, but that's not always what you want to see. So let's actually change those. So if I want to change this a little bit, I can also, with my trackpad, I can click on here and see where the hand comes up again. If I click and drag one direction to the right, it zooms us in. If I go to the left, it'll zoom us out. Well, that's not doing a whole lot for the tick marks for me, is it? I've still got lots of tick marks. But it is a nice feature that you can zoom in and out there, and you can also zoom in and out using the y-axis as well, just going up and down. Okay, so let's say I want to change this axis and I want to get rid of all these extra tick marks. So here's the other option. I can go to Menu, and then I'm going to go to Window Zoom, and I'm going to go to the Window Settings. And here I can say, all right, I'm going to go -5. We already said we're going to do -5 and 5 for my minimum and maximum for x. Notice that it says minimum first and the maximum. So this number always has to be smaller than this number. And then the scale, this is where the tick marks are. So it says auto right now. So I'm going to change this to, I'm going to enter a value, and I'm going to say, let's do it at 1, so that will be on whole numbers. And then on my y minimum scale, I'll do -7 and 7, and then we'll do 1 for this as well. So now that looks a little bit cleaner to me. Now we can see that the scales, that this is wider than here, but that's just because I've got it zoomed in kind of an uneven way because I've got a longer distance going between my Y than I do my X. But at least all of the tick marks are at even one unit tick marks, so that way I can read it a little bit easier. So what if I wanted to add another function? Well, one way is to use the menu. So let's say I want to graph another graph. So I could use the menu and I could go to Actions and, nope, sorry, we're going to go to Graph. We're going to go to Graph, not Actions. And we're going to do Function. So here we see our entry line come up again. So I can do, now let's say, negative 2x plus 10. And when I hit enter, I get another line. Okay, so now this thing is in the way again, so I'm just going to slide this. I'm just going to click and drag like I did before, move that down there. So it's kind of nice that it's got the colors lined up, so the red with the red, the blue with the blue, so that's kind of cool. But notice that the interesting parts of our graph is up above, it's off our screen. So we can try and change our axes just by clicking on these. So we would know that we'd have to go up to at least 10 here, but let's say we didn't know that offhand. So what I can do is I can go to Menu and go to Zoom, Windows Zoom again, and I can go to either zoom in or out, which is kind of like grabbing the axes, but it jumps a little bit quicker instead of kind of a continuous zoom in and out. Or I can go to Zoom Fit. Zoom Fit is where the calculator tries to fit the graph to what it thinks you want to see. So if we do that, now it's zoomed in on these so we can see where these two things intersect. So that's another option. Sometimes it's going to zoom out way too far. Like even this, negative 25 to 35. I don't need that. Sometimes I've seen it go up to like 28,000 and negative 28,000. So, you know, it's trying to give you an idea, but you have to have an idea of what you want to see too. So you might need to change those after you do a zoom fit. You might have to then go and do some readjusting, either by double clicking on here, and let's say, you know, 11, or we'll do 12, double clicking on here, keeping that one, negative 10, and so on. So, or doing your menu or whatever the case might be. So that's some of the basics of your graphing, and that should at least get you started on your graphing. But before I finish, the other thing I want to show you is your entry lines. So where I just typed these equations, where I typed these two equations, was called the entry line. So if this is my favorite keystroke function. I use this all the time. So if I do Control G, that brings up my entry line. Now, if I arrow up, I'll see the negative 2x plus 10, and if I arrow up again, I see my 5x plus 5 function. And it's got the colors around here so we know which ones we're looking at. Maybe I don't need to see this one right now. Maybe I'm just focused on the red one. So I can just go up here and click on this check mark, and that's going to turn that one off. Notice that it still saves the equation in here. So when I click on the graph, the screen, it goes away. It's still in there. It's just not visible right now. So if I want to go back to it, again, I do Control G, and now I can arrow up, and I can click on it again to bring it back. Or I can arrow down, I can turn off the red one. And you can see that you can keep on adding all kinds of different graphs on here at the same time. So, you know, it can get very crowded, but you can also store a lot of graphs and then turn them on and off to view the ones that you want to see or that you don't want to see. So those are some of the basic functions to kind of get you started with graphing. We'll do some more advanced things as we move on, but that should hopefully get you started. I'll talk to you later.